And we are live. Hello, project people, and welcome to an exclusive podcast, Achieving Effective Project Delivery, which is brought to you by the Project Controls Expo Malaysia and in conjunction with Hexagon, the Enterprise Project Performance Solution Ecosys. Ecosys is the global standard for enterprise project controls software that is helping some of the world's largest project-driven organizations to plan and manage project portfolios, control project costs, and improve project performance. Check them out. For more info, you can visit ecosys.net. That's ecosys.net. Now, let's get some introductions on the way. Thank you for joining us today. We're all very excited to be here. My introduction, Val Matthews. I am the co-host and founder of Project Chatter. And as usual, I'm joined by my co-host, Mr. Dale Foong. How are you, Dale?
I'm well, thank you. Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, everyone. Dale Foong, co-founder and host, as Val says, and delighted to be here moderating alongside Val.
You're too kind, sir. You're too kind. Let's get into this. We don't have a lot of time. We have an hour to spend. Let's get some introductions by the individual panelists themselves. Let's head over to the panelists themselves. Here we go. Mohammed, let's start with you.
Hi, everyone. Muhammad Azri from Petronas, and I'm currently Principal Planning and Scheduling. Thank you.
Ahmad?
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm here from University of Malaysia Pahang, BIM consultant. Thanks.
Lovely. James?
Hi, Val. James Crowell from Hexagon, industry consultant.
Beautiful. Liliana?
Hello, I'm Liliana Marmolejo from Mott MacDonald, Risk and Project Controls Lead.
Marco?
Good morning, Marco Frisenda, Transport for London, Head of Planning.
And Anil?
Hi, morning, afternoon, evening, everyone. Anil Godable, founder of Project Controls Expo, and I'm delighted to be here with you all experts. Thank you.
Fantastic. No, it's great to have everybody on board, and we did speed that up on purpose. Just if you didn't catch that, check out the website. But we did want to get into the questions. So we've garnered all the questions and we've categorized them into 3 topics for today. We're going to talk about people, process, and technology in the context of achieving effective project delivery. I'm super excited about the topic. I want to hear what these panelists have to say. Let's get stuck into it. So our first topic for today and discussion point is around people. And let's get into it with Ahmad. The first question is for you, my friend. What are the skills required of project teams to enjoy benefits of BIM implementation?
Okay, if you look at it, the heart of BIM implementation lies on the usage of 3D BIMs, 3D digital model, and also it is more towards model-based centric rather than paper-based or 2D documentation. So having to say that means that there are 3 areas of the things that are going to be new to the normal project delivery, which is we need somebody or competency to author the models. We need somebody to manage and coordinate the models, and later on somebody to review the models. So as far as project team as a whole is concerned, prior to the implementation, everybody agreed that all the project team need to know how to read the drawings as a basic skill and knowledge. So when BIM comes into the picture, regardless what role that you're playing around, so the ability, or the way I should say, is to read the models is become critical, whether we are project manager, or coordinator, model, or engineer, everything. Because most of the deliverables comes in the form of digital model. If we can't able to open and read information inside pertaining the model, then it won't be useful enough for the project team to maneuver around. So as I said just now, as a general skill set for the people involved in the project team, they need to be able to read the model, extract information from the model, and maneuver the model. And then for the specific purpose of the model itself, the one is more specializing in authoring the model, we name it authoring or developing the models across discipline, whether it's architecture, structure, mechanical, electrical, and don't need somebody to manage and also coordinate the model accordingly. Because quite sometimes we appoint somebody to deliver the BIM model, but when the model received by the contractor, the client, or even by the subcontractor, what's next to do? Nobody know how to read the model. Nobody know how to check physical activity as compared to what the model being delivered to them. And then that really delimits the purpose of having BIM within the project. And then this also brings to the situation where currently, if you look at it, some people only targeted at delivering the deliverables of BIM rather than putting BIM as part of the process within the project delivery, then that will definitely defeat the purpose of having and fully utilizing or gain benefit out of BIM implementation.
That is amazing, Ahmed.
Yeah.
Sorry, do you want to finish off there?
I think that's all for now.
Awesome. No, I love it because you have to go all in to gain the full benefit is what I'm taking out of it. And everyone needs to be conversant in BIM. If we step up from that, Mohammed, and I come to you, just generally speaking, one of the questions we got in from the audience was, what the thoughts on the people side of project management and delivery, because there is this wider view that, right, BIM is great and that, but what's your thoughts on that? What do we need to do to ensure that our people are all achieving effective project delivery?
Okay, thank you very much for the question. I think it is an excellent question. In my opinion, people play most important parts in project delivery. We take this as a super crucial, where people is also equivalent to communication. To me, in project control itself, when we develop a plan, resources is among the most important factor in assurance that we can deliver the project effectively. So that's why moving on, the more and more effective communication within the project team has been put into most priority items when you want to set up or you want to deliver a project. So I would like to bring this again with people. I think on the subject today, it's always come together, the process and tools. So the people will drive the importance of people with sufficient competency, skills that will allow the effective project delivery. Thank you, Dale.
Thank you, Mohammed. Excellent points there. I think as well, given that we are in kind of isolation from each other now, the cross-boundary and having access to countries' resources has been very, very strict. It brings me into the next question with Liliana. The first question actually about the pandemic and how that's affecting people. The question is, how is the pandemic or COVID affecting people in project delivery roles from your experience, Liliana?
Thank you, Val. I think this has a huge effect on people. The COVID pandemic is a lot of uncertainty on whether projects will continue or not. And that really makes people nervous and really, the focus will not be there. Also, working from home is a big challenge for those with families and small children. So all of that will have an effect on project delivery. Personally, one of the biggest challenges is the lack of interaction, of like face-to-face interaction. I really miss being able to have a quick conversation or just make a joke and just continue with your project delivery. I think that is a challenge that everybody is facing. Yeah, I think to conclude is just that a human side is important for successful project delivery, and we need to get around that. And definitely project controls will be, and building those tools will be one way to do so.
Amazing answer, Liliana, and I couldn't agree more. And actually, following and building on for that, James, coming to you, one of the questions we got as well was, what are the challenges and solutions for managing project team members at different locations and time zones? Well, one example is right here on the call. We're in different time zones, but this is just 1 hour. How do you do this on a project that takes years, if not decades at times, depending on how long you go?
Yeah, exactly, Dale. When I think about a global project team, I think about someone in Melbourne, Australia, putting in a full 8 hours on a project. It's extremely efficient work. And then at the end of their day, they package it up nicely, just in time for London to be able to go throughout their day and put in another 8 hours and pass it over to someone in Houston, Texas. And it just, you get a full 24-hour coverage. And you even have some overlap of the time zones for that different collaboration periods. That's what I imagine in my head. But having had this experience of working on global projects, it doesn't quite work like that. As I'm sure everyone on the panel here can agree, it's actually can be very inefficient at times, and you can lose days at a time for simple tasks, simple handovers, or questions and answers. So I think that the most important thing is to have good communication in place, to have a collaborative platform that everyone can access all of the information and share their progress and thoughts. And ultimately, it's the people that decide what processes that they will enlist on projects and what tools will help enable them.
Well said, James. Well said. And we've had you up on a previous podcast as well. You're full of knowledge. Thanks for your help. Anil, we're going to pick on you next. And again, you get lucky. You get the COVID question too. But this is very prevalent. And I know a lot of people are wondering about projects in COVID. How COVID-19 would impact the way PMT, and maybe you can help me with this acronym, will control overall project planning and project cost. Does anyone know what PMT is?
Yeah, project management team. I believe that's what is the person or the audience would like to mention. Assuming it's a PMT, it's a project management team. I definitely concur with James and Liliana. So the impact on the PMT is the reduced interaction, face-to-face interactions. It would make a knock-on effect on the actual delivery, but I think it can be managed with some robust processes and systems around it. And as Mr. Azri has clearly said, people is the core of any project. And when there are limitations on communications part, it will indeed have an impact on the effectiveness of the project delivery. But that can be managed, and I'm seeing some great examples around me where a lot of individuals and professionals have tried to overcome that challenge by putting some robust processes and systems around within their existing work environment, and try to minimize the impact. I don't think we can totally replace it, but we can definitely minimize it. And again, just to summarize, no brainer, it will have an impact, but it can be managed with the robust systems and processes in your work environment.
Amazing. We've had some really great insight into COVID, the impacts on pandemic, working globally, and now a meaty one for you, Mr. Marco Frisenda, nice and early in the morning. How do you control contractors that seemingly slow down progress by reducing resources that should be provided for the entire project? That is a huge question.
Wow.
Well,
Good luck.
Absolutely. That's basically taking almost the entirety of what a project team does for the 1, 2, 3 years of the project life cycle. I think now there are a couple of things which are important, which is how you set it up from the very beginning, because based obviously on the contract also, because there are information that you can get and some which you can't get. But generally speaking, if you set up it in the correct way, so you have a proper baseline, and then depending, especially in the specific of how does this impact when they try to slow down. Obviously, you have many things like the manpower allocation that you have at the very beginning as a baseline. The contractor can say, we are going to provide this profile, so this you can start to link then with the progress which is really achieved on site, and that's where you can start to to have the conversation where if they are slowing down because they don't have enough people, that's one side of the coin. Or, which is then even different, you are not getting the progress that you want. Let's say that they are trying to slow it down, but probably they're even not trying. They're doing it just because they are not achieving what they should achieve. Then that's where you normally go on the schedule itself. So from a control perspective, you have a schedule, you have the weekly view, for example, if you are on site, and you can literally control that the tasks are done as per the plan. Now, that's obviously an ideal world. Reality is that there will always be, changes, but as long as the progress is still maintained, and as I say, progress curve, float erosion, for example, manpower allocation, quantity installed, or other things. These are all the tools that when you put them together from a control function, together with the commercial manager, that's how you can then, ensure that you can't make them work in a sense, but for sure it can flag it up immediately if there is a problem.
Yeah, no, very well put. Very, very well put indeed. Before we move on to the next section, we did extremely well there for time. So thank you to all the panelists for being very succinct and clear. I think those were amazing answers. Let's just pause there quickly. We do have one Q&A coming in. So listeners, send in your Q&A. We do have a bit of time. And this one, I think, will come back to you, James, because it talks about time zone is one item, but the concern is the cultural gap, which makes overall processes inefficient in our community. How can we control this? And maybe it is a process question, and we are going into processes next, so it's probably a good segue. But do you want to tackle the cultural differences, James, and follow up to your question, your initial one?
Yeah, that is a good question. And as someone who has worked in different cultures, lived in different countries, I can attest to that there are different processes. I think the overarching business process is similar across a company that is globally spread, but there needs to be the flexibility in the process to allow for these sub processes that are occurring that could be extra steps that need to be taken in different cultures, or simply things that can't be done in one country or one culture that can be in another.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well said there, James. No, thank you. And I think it's rightly so. Ravi, thanks for your question. And do please reach out if you've got any Q&A. We do conclude with people, and I guess we did people first because it's the obvious choice. People are obviously the most important part of the equation, and it's probably the most obvious, but we're going to move into something now a little bit more detailed, and we're going to talk about process. Before we do, though, just want to make sure that everyone knows all the potential questions raised by the attendees will be shared on the projectcontrolexpo.com/KL website. And if you can stay with us to the end, I left this out because I really want people to be registered and listening. If you stay to the end, there is some bonus prizes. We are going to spin the wheel, and you can get some free tickets. We won't tell you too much yet, but do stay to the end for a bonus round. Cool. Let's go. Right, we're going into process now. The first question back with you, Mr. Ahmad. Are you ready, sir?
Yes, I'm ready.
Okay, good. What are some of the contractual related challenges in relation to BIM implementation?
The question itself is very challenging to answer within 3 minutes time.
Have a go.
If you read through or the experience that people have gone through, there are many problems that they will specify regarding to the implementation. They can come up with a contract requirement, and then also the so-called ownership issue, and so on and so forth. But having implementing BIM for quite some time, unclear scope and also unclear expectation that being specified within the contract is the biggest challenges. That's how I see it. Because when we in Malaysia, when we started to put a propaganda to implement BIM, people started to heavily implementing BIM right now. You can see the growth starting from visually alienated in Malaysia, now becoming people keep chasing want to implementing BIM. But when the client want to impose it, how good is good the way the contract is written for them, especially on the scope of work that need to be delivered for BIM, and also how enough is enough to be implemented. So when three people are producing the 3D BIM model or deliverables out of the BIM model, how good we can say this is good enough and can be submitted for the next process. So as far as the process is concerned, we have a few readily available within the market. The standard and so on and so forth, such as ISO 19650 plus 1192 previously, and also in Malaysia, so we have a Public Work Department, GKR BIM requirement. But all those requirements doesn't give any technical specification for the model itself that need to be delivered. As good that they can produce it simply by stating LOD 500, 300, something like that. But specifically, how detailed that the model that need to be delivered are not well be written within the contract, or also within the any documentation specification. That's the first challenges that I see. And then when the client put in a written format within their contract, sometimes they mean differently when they want to acquire what that need to be delivered. So there's another challenges, and sometimes also they acquire something more than what been written in the contract. So I would say the fundamental always goes back to the scope of work that really need to be delivered by the client, and also how we want to really satisfy that requirement that they really want to have it. So my recommendation, if anybody, especially in Malaysia, when the moment you get the BIM contract or any job regarding to the BIM, so please sit down again with your client and go through item by item and make an addendum again to ensure what you want to deliver is really what the client wants. I think that's all for my part for the time being.
That's an amazing answer. And yeah, you're right. It's a lot to jam pack into a couple of minutes on, especially on the contract. There's so many various angles. But let's move to you, Mohammed. The next one is another meaty one as well. And it goes back to the COVID-19 impact. What processes can projects implement for successful delivery during this COVID-19 pandemic? That's a huge, huge question. I'm sure you have plenty of ideas. Do we know all of them? I don't know. I mean, I think we're still discovering in many terms. But yeah, what's your thoughts on that?
Yeah, thank you. I think I can't answer in totality what process today, because we have a very short time to elaborate on this part. But what important is for us to understand, with COVID-19 come into our life, in our culture, in our environment, we have to admit that work from home is one of our new norms. I think even today, we can communicate throughout the global. Yeah, someone is in London, someone is in Malaysia, and we can communicate almost 24 hours with everyone. And things are going very fast. In my in my opinion, there's so many processes that or execution plan that we can improve or we can adopt from the experience of COVID-19. But most important to me is the platform itself. I think enterprise, IoT, digitalization, all of this is super crucial now. This is all the new things that without saying we have to use, we have to apply, we have to adopt. And it's not only from the owner or client side, it must also go fast from the contractor or the service provider. I think this is important, where collaboration is number one priority now, where from here, the process or the execution plan that we are developing and agreed together in delivery the project can be consensus or can be agreed, while the work can be performed seamless. I take one example, like what we're having now is by applying the 4D scheduling, where the illustrative of the work from schedule itself allowed many disciplines to understand more clearly. The tracking of the progress by using intelligent drone with itself provide real-time information regardless where you are, and allow the stakeholder to give their feedback as well, if in the event there is any improvement required. So I think I can't say specific the process, but in general, I think digitalization, IoTs, all this is important to be adopted into our new processes, as well in our new norms of delivering projects. Thank you.
Yeah, really good points there. And I think what you're saying is there is some disruption, but technology is going to help us improve our processes and particularly help us with achieving effectively on big projects in the delivery phase. Liliana, I want to carry on. I think you're getting a bit of a theme here from the questions that you will see from our audience. It's around BIM, and I know we will get to technology as well, but it's also around what's going to happen during COVID. This is obviously front of mind for everybody, and I'm sure everybody's sick of hearing about it, but for projects, it's a big deal. And I want to go to this process question for you, Liliana. How can we manage the project to be more sustainable in the face of the post-COVID era? And I guess there's a bit of interpretation with the sustainable here. But what do you think about that?
Thanks, Val. I think what Mohammed said is very valuable, and I think that take us to very similar like team in here. I think that the alignment throughout the supply chain is very important, and this event itself is great because we have people from the client side, from the developers, from me, from the consultant side. So we all face similar challenges throughout the COVID era, but it's really becoming more innovative, really thinking we all want to achieve a successful project, deliver on time, really make sure that the cost is maintained. And this is a big challenge for clients as well as the contractors themselves, because it's something really unexpected, and we need to be really looking for opportunities on how to do it better, how to work together. So I really recommend having kind of brainstorming sessions with throughout the supply chain to really focus on, this is where we are in our project. How can we really plan the future so we can be more efficient, have that really common data environment, and we are all in different really level of expertise and maturity in terms of digital, but we know that is what we need in the future, and that's what we need to deliver successful projects. That collaboration, that interaction between each other is vital, really, to deliver sustainable project outcomes.
Absolutely, couldn't agree more. Collaboration, that word you mentioned there near the end, I think is key for a lot of things, Liliana, but thank you for that answer. James, moving to you. Your process question is around tools as well, but we'll stick to processes, but it is, how is technology disrupting project delivery processes? And if you may, or if you do have any real world experiences, the person is asking for any real life experiences.
Sure, I do. Dale, I want to describe to you a fictional scenario that I'm sure would never, a hypothetical situation that I'm sure would never happen in real life. So I hire you on to my company, you're my newest hire, you go through new hire orientation, and as soon as you complete that, I hand you this 5-inch binder with hundreds of pages. In fact, it's two 5-inch binders, because there's always two binders for some reason, because it's not big. One binder is not big enough, but these contain all of my important business processes that I want you to have a read through on your first days and weeks at my company. So I hope you enjoy that activity. But anyway, I'm sure that hasn't happened to anyone, certainly myself.
No.
But what imagine if you were in that situation, technology could help you get out of that in a much more productive way if you were able to enable those processes into a system, a tool that can help you intuitively navigate that business process. So that's what technology is doing. It's eliminating the need to memorize these processes and to have the historical knowledge within your company. You can actually learn this and be directed in the right way through a tool. Some direct experience, some things that I've seen technology help. One of the biggest ones is that it actually highlights certain blind spots that you had before you had technology in place. So I've seen this happen a lot of times where a new tool is implemented and the users, the project teams, they're all saying, "Oh, the system is wrong." And you say, "Okay, that's interesting. Let's take a look. I haven't heard of the system being wrong before." And you actually find out that it is showing you a true problem that you had that you never knew you had before you had this technology in place. So that's a real world example of what I've seen the benefits that it brings.
Well said, James. And yeah, I've seen a few binders floating around myself, but also I think there is this massive disruption with technology coming in to disrupt processes in general. I think there is a bit of a triangle going on, but maybe processes and technology are becoming one and merging. Look, Anil, I've got a question I don't have a question for you, but I just wanted your comments on this idea of process and technology in your view.
No, indeed. I mean, as we all say that there's a famous triangle of people, process, tool. The maturity of all these three has to be equal for an effective project delivery. You have some great processes, but you do not have the right tools to implement those processes. If you have the right tools and the processes, but the people are not competent enough to operate those processes or implement those processes, even that's not right. Okay. And of course, with the other two combination, it's really, really important that all these three key parameters are matured equally, and there's a consistent understanding across the organization to allow you to have that effective project delivery. On that note, I mean, there are a few questions which are coming up on the chat, and I really want to make sure that, we address them. You want to take that up, Val, or before?
Yeah. So what we'll do is we'll get Marco in there for the last process question, and then we will answer some Q&A. I see some as well there. Dale, over to you, mate.
Well, yeah, indeed. We do want to get some of the Q&A in there, and we're doing nicely for time, so we can sneak some in. But Marco, before we do that, I'm going to come to you with another meaty one. And yeah, it is around process, as we're on the process topic. But should we use cost-loaded schedules on projects? Now, this is a debate that we can have with all of us on the call for probably days, hours, weeks. But what's your view on that?
So I think it's becoming, this cost loading seems like the magic stick which enables you to solve all your problems on the project. Let's be completely honest. It depends on the type of contract as a starting point. So you don't need to have a cost-loaded schedule if you are, for example, in a milestone payment scheme where you have a milestone which triggers a payment. Why? Because it doesn't really matter how your costs are. You are going to get a payment, for example, which is triggered by a single milestone. So option A under NEC is a classical example where if there are not other reasons behind, you would not really want to cost load the schedule. Also because we have to recognize one other thing, which many people forget. Cost loading is not only when you do the baseline and you put your cost inside to get the curve. You need to maintain it. And maintaining a cost loaded schedule in the proper way, together with the cost controller, is not something which is very easy, because then the progress, you have the cost which needs to be updated. So you need always to focus on the benefit. So the cost loading is clearly perfect and is needed if you are, for example, in an EC option C contract, where it's a pain and gain at the end of the game, where you pay on progress, or for example, when you have unit rates that you want to know exactly what you're going to pay every period and have a forecast where you are. So for me, we have to be a little bit cautious, like people say, oh, we should resource load. Yes, but again, why do you want to resource load? Because the resource loading, if you have scarcity of people, that's absolutely correct to see if you are overloading one person against the other one. For other reasons, not sure, depends. So the cost loading part, I think, is a very valuable tool to cost load the schedule when you have what I call open payments or forms of contract, which basically you need to have the proper, spread and know at every time how much you are going to pay and have a forecast against that. In other cases, like turnkey projects in oil and gas or in power, the ones I was doing before, we were not cost loading the schedule because we were having payment milestones. So whatever was our profile between the payments, of course we were having a profile, don't get me wrong, because otherwise we would do something wrong. But generally speaking, I would not cost load physically the schedule. And as I say, people need to remember that when you cost load the schedule, you need to have a planner which has the skill set, which is not only on the planning side, but also on the cost side. And it's not that easy. It's, it's always a little bit a balance.
No, absolutely. And, you clearly know your stuff, Marco, and there's lots of various angles to this. So thanks for sharing that. And Val and I had a debate around this a while back as well. So, not everyone agrees with what you can and can't do. But Val, we do want to make a bit of time at the end of this section for some Q&A. I don't think we can answer all of them, but our audience is getting warmed up. We've got quite a few coming in. And if we don't answer them live here, they will be answered on the website. So, yeah, Val, have you chosen a victim?
Oh, it's so hard to choose. And I'm going to open this to the whole panel. So just chime in who wants to answer this one. We'll start with Nur. And there's a few around COVID. No surprise there. How to manage COVID-19 claims in the perspective of contractor and client, and how effective is force majeure clause in a contract being fair to all parties? That is a big question to answer. Who would like to have a go at that first?
If you want, I can.
Marco, I was waiting for you to put your hand up, sir. Good on you.
I think, Marco would be the most appropriate one because he's sitting on the client side, and he would be listening to, and most importantly, TFL being an infrastructure client. This is very common in that environment. So, Marco, it's over to you, actually.
And he's studying law, Anil. So there you go.
Oh, fantastic. Yeah, that's good.
So, yes, I think that the real issue that we have is that the COVID-19 per se is actually never specified in any contract. So if you take, for example, contract where force majeure, as an example, you know that force majeure are what they call the act of God. So, for example, flooding or things which were not foreseeable as a general definition. And now there is a big debate because COVID-19 obviously is part of the events which are not foreseeable. But the truth is, it doesn't really enter into a force majeure as per the definition of the force majeure or the understanding of the force majeure. So what happens is that clients, for example, like us, because it's a recognized pandemic and it's a recognized, something which really couldn't be foreseen, you normally try to work with the contractor, with the subcontractor, in order to fit this into a delay, which is, let's say, an excusable delay, and you will find ways which are extra contract. Because if you start to apply the contract, as you really should apply the contract, probably you end up in having a lot of contractor which would not be paid or would have a really big issue. And when you take the force majeure clause, the force majeure still remains. The only point is that somebody will start to draft the contracts where they will add in the force majeure specific clause, for example, something like pandemic. I don't think they will call it COVID-19 because if it comes COVID-20, then you will not be applying it again. So it will be something which will take into consideration events that at that time when these clauses were written were not foreseen.
Fantastic, Marco. No, thanks for being succinct. We do have to move on because of time, but anyone who does have a question, don't worry, we will get to them all, even on the website, and we'll share that with you at the end of the podcast. Now, let's move on to the next topic section. I know everyone's excited about technology. We could talk about tools all day long, and I want to leave enough time and space for questions about technology because I'm sure there's going to be a few. This is definitely an interesting theme coming out of this. I see BIM, I see things about COVID, and I see technology. So let's get into it. Ahmad, I'm going to pick on you again to start with. Are you ready, sir? Here we go. What are some of the applications of BIM, there we go, that could be beneficial for project control delivery?
Okay, I think just now some of the panel already mentioned about 4D simulation, where we tie the 3D sequence, 3D model into the sequence of project, then we can animate and simulate the sequence of the project scheduling. And then, but really, when we come to the project delivery, we need to understand first the nature of BIM itself, and also which part of having to give benefit in the term of a low-hanging fruit for all project participants. So the way I look at it, the visual clash check and visual clash review is another part of application that might be useful for everybody, because it will allow any discrepancy or any problem to be detected right before the physical activity takes place at the site. But having to say that, this also open up to a new problems to the construction itself. For instance, prior to the implementation, because the virtual clash check and virtual design review is not possible to be made because we rely on civil simply on 2D, we don't even detect the problem and we don't even need to think about the problem. The moment virtual clash check being imposed, it opened up a lot of problems regarding to the design and the succeeding activity need to be done. So it added up a new activity that you need to resolve all those design issues first before you going through the next activity. Whereas if you are using 2D methodology, you don't even bother about it because you don't know there's a problem residing within the 2D drawings. Okay, and then also another application is that it would be easier to do the site validation regarding to what need to be done and what already been constructed at site. And also, I think one of the biggest application that good for to implement BIM is a common data environment or cloud-based data storage, where everybody will refer to the same location 24/7, where you can simply go log in and retrieve all the project information and then meetings and everything from there.
Great answer. No, amazing answer. So I picked up visualization so you can see everything, validation on site, and single source of truth. That is, yes. 3 pointers there, folks. Take those, write those down, get in touch with Dr. Ahmed afterwards and he'll tell you more. But let's move on to Muhammad. Are you ready for your question on tools? Yours is, what tools are there for integrating contractors and the client information?
Okay, thank you for the question. Okay, there is so many available tools in the market for all of us to select. But I'm not trying to promote, but I think let's understand one of the event like Project Control Expo is where the venue you can basically understand and explore yourself together with the client as well as among the contractors or the service provider. There you can understand better. But most important, when we talk about the tool itself, moving forward, I think we are looking most important is on visibility. Make it visible, transparent, as well as we need to collaborate. I think among the contractor or client, it should be a collaboration where it get more harmony and it can deliver the job more effectively. So the enterprise platform, which we have a lot now in the market, will give definitely a bigger impact as well as better results in controlling the project. So I would say I can't answer specific on many tools because I can be biased to anyone. But I think that's go and attend like this Project Control Expo where you can understand more, as well as make sure it is visible and able to provide better communication and collaboration. That's the keywords or key points that I can share today that perhaps will bring benefits to all. Okay.
Appreciate that, Mohammed. And I love that you weren't too biased there. Obviously, we should mention Hexagon Ecosys, and I'm sure there'll be plenty of other software providers and SaaS companies at the Project Controls Expo, which is always good to see what new technology is coming out. Technology is always evolving, and it's a very interesting area, particularly for project delivery and how effective we can be. Liana, I've got a question for you on tools. Are you ready? So here we go. How are you planning to control the time and money lost during the pandemic using the latest project management tools?
Okay, so yeah, I think it's some of the thoughts from Mohammed and Dr. Ahmad are very valuable. I think real-time data is really key to make us swift to well-informed decisions, and we are going through constant change and uncertainty. So for me, is really having that consistent information that we can rely on. So throughout the supply chain again, because if you know the source of the truth, you will be able to plan for any problem that you face going forwards. So I think is the challenge. There are challenges to that because we are going through a transition and we have projects ongoing that perhaps are not really using the latest technology. So it's really how we really bridge the new with the legacy systems without compromising security and making sure that we are moving forwards and evolving all the time. So just to conclude, that transparency and collaboration is really fundamental for the success of project delivery.
Amazing. I love how you've added transparency onto collaboration, because those two are so key in projects. Yet we see very little of it sometimes, particularly around the commercial environment. Anyway, moving on, Mr. James Kroll. This is actually a great question, because I guess it comes from someone that's potentially new in using tools and technology. How do PPM tools help manage projects, and what is its value proposition?
Okay, great. So the tools discussion, my time to shine now. So what PPM tools allow you to do is automate manual processes, which just removes the boring work from your day-to-day life. So things like downloading data from different systems and manipulating spreadsheets and compiling reports. This is what the technology does automatically, so you can view this information in real time, get your early warning indicators, your insights, so you can take action today that can correct a problem and help you down the road. So the value proposition comes from having an environment, a system or a tool that all of the projects are using that rolls up to your program and portfolio level, gives you the ultimate visibility. It allows you to see different trends that are occurring on specific projects. If you are a project manager on one project, you might think that a small overrun is not a big deal, but if every single project is having that mentality, it starts to add up. And at a more macro level, you can start to do the analysis and see where these trends are having larger impacts, maybe small impacts on individual projects, but larger across the organization. And then I've seen in my experience, I've seen companies, before they embark on the journey of implementing a software, they try to do a business case justification, which is difficult to quantify because you have to have a good handle on what the cost of your current inefficiencies are today. But I had a customer a couple years ago tell it to me best. And he said, instead of thinking about how to quantify your return on investment, the way that he was thinking of it is when he looks around at his competitors and just the digital transformation across the industry, he just came to the determination was that you can't afford to not be taking these steps today, because the reality is that everyone is digitizing their processes and moving down this direction, and you don't want to get left behind.
Well said, James. You always know what to say, when to say, and how to say it. I love the delivery of that. And it's very, very important, as well as the fact that we have a lot of data. We're data rich and information poor. I think Dale says that quite a bit on our podcast, but I really appreciate your feedback there. Now, Anil, I'm going to give you the hairy conversation, the one around AI, because it's a fantastic term that gets thrown around a lot around projects, and sometimes it's misunderstood or misinterpreted. The application of AI into project delivery. What are your thoughts on that?
So AI is the future. That's definitely the straight answer. Now, as you rightly said, the AI is being heavily misinterpreted this time, but maybe because this is still going through its early stages. And as we go further and the more data comes into the picture, I think AI will get more mature and it will give you the desired results. At this point of time, I can see some applications with the help of AI, but the future indeed is going to be driven by that. And as James has said, this monotonous operations, a lot of labor intensive task is going to be converted. So for example, I mean, if I look back into my career of building some oil and gas schedules, there was a time when we used to build 50,000 activity schedule by hand. And it used to take months to do that and collaborate with a wide range of stakeholders. And as we all say, communication is the key, and getting the buy-in from everyone. and it was a tedious and hard process. Now with the AI, and I know a couple of big vendors who are working in that space, the objective is to build this schedule on its own by using 500,000 odd projects sitting on the server. And that would give us the much more reliable information, primarily because they are as-built schedules. So we have the actual information, what actually it took to build one foundation in a particular circumstances. So AI is the future. And I often being asked, if AI is the future, is my job obsolete? If I'm no more being a planner, I mean, do you need a planner? Well, the answer to that is very simple. You would still need a planner. You would just need to move to a different skill set. I mean, when I was in the early parts of my career in early 2000s, 90% of the time we were actually building the schedule. Only 10% of the time we were analyzing it. In reality, it should be vice versa. 90% of the time you should be analyzing it, and only 10% of the time you're going to build it. So AI is going to make that happen. So as a planner or a scheduler or a cost engineer, your job is going to analyze it and do more informed decision making based on the data you have in the hand, rather than keep on working and creating that data. So I think AI is the future. The roles are going to change, and it is only going to make projects more efficient, of course, if we use sensibly.
I couldn't agree more, and it's complementary, as you're saying, Anil. It will just enhance the profession and indeed project delivery. I totally agree with that. Mr. Fresenda, you've been waiting there patiently for your tools question, and this is quite an interesting one as well, because it centers around schedule. Are there schedule tools that can help to identify potential delays or opportunities to accelerate?
So that's a question which a lot depends now on the interpretation, because obviously tool for me is the what type of schedule what type of software you're using for the schedule itself, and then for what concerns then how you accelerate or you mitigate a schedule. That's then a completely different type of action. So what I'm trying to say is, independently if you are using Primavera P6 or you're using Microsoft Project or you're using any other, because now there are quite a number of other types of software on the market. That's
ecosystem.
But my point is that's how you build the schedule. That's where you put the logic. When then it comes to acceleration or mitigation, that's where you really need to start to do the planner job rather than just put something on a software, because that's where you start to look at, can I do something at the same time as another activity? Do I have enough space? So that's where actually the collaboration is quite important. I remember, for example, sitting in a container in the middle of Saudi Arabia, sitting with the commissioning manager, and we were trying to find a way to do the commissioning faster, because we were late, obviously. And that's my point. So the durations and so on were in the schedule, the logic was there, but then we started to, not to play, but to look what could be done. And that's where, as a planner, for example, you can't know everything, and you definitely need to have the right people to interact with you, which then enables you to come, to an acceleration or an analysis of what is happening. And if that doesn't happen, you can be, you can know a lot of things because of experience, but you will never, be able to look at it in the same way if you have with you, like in that case, for example, a commissioning manager, which actually knew it at his fingertip, and he was actually telling me, I could do this test before that test. And then clearly I was helping and so on. But that goes then back to all the other things which were said, which is collaboration, which many times, especially for the project control part, sometimes they tend to work a little bit in isolations, thinking, oh, I have to produce that and then give it, whereas it is actually a core linker between all the people which are in the team, which are bringing their own skill set, and the planner project control function puts them all together in order to be able to come and say, oh, yes, we can actually do this faster, or we can do it, we're not going to achieve it because we need more time. Nobody likes to hear that, but unfortunately it happens. So that's that I think is really important. And unfortunately, this doesn't happen often, because many times you will hear the real person which has the skill, which doesn't have time because he has other things to do, or doesn't want to invest 15 minutes to sit with the planner and explain, and tell what he wants to do, but then he complains later on that the schedule is wrong. So that's a little bit for me the funny part, when you go in real life, where, oh, you didn't sit with me, so I've done what I know with my experience. And then the guy, oh, but it's wrong. So if you would have sitted with me 10 minutes, we would have done it correctly.
Yeah, no, awesome. I think what I take from that is, yes, there's some amazing tools out there that we can use, but if we're not using them properly, it's, the whole garbage in, garbage out. So absolutely agree with that. So we have time for one quick question from the audience. And I don't know who wants to take this one on. It's got to do with contracts again and COVID-19. But here goes. It's from Naresh. COVID-19 has undoubtedly impacted collaboration between project teams, hence leading to somewhat reduced productivity and potential impacts to delivery timeframes and costs. In your experience, what are some of the key addendums that can be added to contract clauses to recognize the impact of COVID-19 and make the contracts fair for successful project delivery? A huge question. So what addendums can be added in the light of COVID-19 to make things more fair contractually? I see a lot of people thinking. Anyone want to tackle that one?
I'm waiting to hear what the answer is.
I think that someone who's studying law should answer that.
To be honest, I think we have to pay a little bit of attention, because many people are piggybacking on the COVID-19 and inefficiency. For example, for activities like design or engineering design. Now, you can have a little bit of a change because of the work from home and tools that you don't have. But let's be honest, designing from home on a AutoCAD or on a 3D model, or designing it from the office, you can't really say that there is an inefficiency if we look at it in the proper way. And I think, as I said, the only addendum which I can see fit is to include this in a force majeure event, because let's be honest, any company now, when they will start to build their time, will put as uncertainty, when they do, for example, duration, they will put an element of inefficiency due to, can be COVID-19, but can be whatever. So I think what happens is, and I can see this already happening, people, contractors are starting to increase some of the durations based on the fact that there will be inefficiency, which, as I said, some of them I understand, especially the ones on site. Some of them I have a hard time to accept, because real. But let's say, generally speaking, I don't think that the contract itself is going to solve the problem. It will, as I said, the contract, yes, on the force majeure, it's clear it has to make sure that it takes. But you don't really need an addendum, because it's already happening. I can see already durations which before were 2 weeks to do a design, and now have become 3 weeks. And when you ask, how did you calculate it? And then it comes always, oh, it's inefficiency due to COVID-19. So important is
sorry to cut you off there, just for timing, but I agree with you, Marco. It is a very, very tough question. I love where James just said, I want to hear what the answer is, because it's a really, really tough one. But that does bring us to the end and the exciting bits about spinning the wheel, and we've got a treat in for everyone. But before we do that, I just want to say thank you to all of our panelists. It's been amazing to get so much insight packed into 1 hour. I know there's so much more we could talk about. I know there's a huge debate we could probably have as well, but also thanks to our organizer, PC Malaysia. Thank you to the sponsors for this as well, Hexagon, for enabling today's discussion. And again, if you want to hear more about it, visit ecosys.net. All information's there. Get linked in with James as well. He'll point you in the right directions. And thank you to all of you who have joined us. It's been amazing. But Amelina, over to you for the Wheel of Fortune.
Thank you. So Dale, please let me know when you want me to spin the wheels.
Go ahead.
Right.
So amazing. Our first winner, Ryan Chang. We've got 2 more.
Yes. 1, 2, 3.
Our second winner, and I'm going to pronounce this in South African, Gideon. Hopefully it is Gideon. Otherwise it's Gideon. Congratulations. And our third one. Wow. That is a long name.
Come on.
Abang Mode Fauzi Abang Abdul Hamid. There we go. I've given it a go. I've had my coffee this morning. Congratulations. Huge congratulations to all 3 winners. Amelina will be in touch with your tickets. And just a reminder that PC Malaysia has now moved to May next year, 23rd to 25th. So please register for that. We'll look forward to seeing you there. Again, thank you to all of you. Over 300 joined us today. It's been amazing to be a part of this. And thank you to all the panelists once again. We'll see you all at the Expo. From me and Val, it's bye for now.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye, everyone.
Okay, bye. Thank you. Bye.
Bye.